Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a dress-up game in Flash, click and drag dress-up game. I'm going to show you how to get it on the web, how to build it, and also how you can publish it to an Android device. Keep in mind, I'm going to keep the code at a minimum, assuming that people don't know how to code in ActionScript 3. So we're going to be using a lot of code snippets and doing minimal editing. So to begin, start Flash. We're using CS6, and this tutorial will work for both Windows and Mac. I'm going to go to File, New, and we're going to set it for ActionScript 3. Okay, so this is our stage. Before we start pulling in pictures, we're going to set up some layers here. We'll call this one background. Call this one items. We're going to be using a picture of a cartoon girl, so we'll just call this girl. And then menu box. Okay, let's grab some pictures here. Now these are just PNG files. I chose them because of the transparency. You can also use GIF, but PNG is a little better quality. And we can just select these and drag them right into the library. Does take a second to process them all. Okay. Okay, let's extend these to 2 frames. So select the frame and hit F5. F5. For the background, we are going to hit F6 because we want to have 2 separate backgrounds. And what we're going to do is we're going to set it to where you click the background and it actually changes. So let's start with the backgrounds. You are going to have to do some resizing depending on the size of your background. So our stage is 550 by 400. So let's select the image. 550 by 400. And we want that at coordinate 0, 0. Okay, so that's our first one. Go in and grab the ocean one. And just do the same thing. Okay. Let's go to the menu box and just select a color. Okay, this is where we're going to put the items, so you can click and drag them over to the model or the girl. Okay, now since these are layers, you do have to think in terms of layers. Obviously the background's at the bottom. Items you want on top of the menu box, so we're just going to select that, drag that up. And let's put the items on the stage. Now you are going to have to do some resizing just to see what looks okay. Where's my, there's... Okay, so we have a Mario hat and a Carmen Sandiego hat. Let's bring in the model. Or the girl. Okay. Now keep in mind you can always draw it right here in Flash. I highly recommend doing it in Photoshop just so you have a lot more options to work with. And it's a little easier to work with as well. Now, she had white pants on. I did not notice that it was a transparency, so Let's just go in there, add another layer, put it below the girl. And we're going to just draw that white. So, and since this is white, and we're drawing it in Flash, we can actually make this into a symbol, and you can click on her pants, and you can change them into a color. It's going to be the same thing we're going to be doing for the background. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we have everything set up that we want. Let's see here. Let's resize these so it actually looks a lot better. Okay. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, select the object that you want to create it into a click and drag environment. Hit F9. Now this is where the action script code is going to go. Actually, real quick, make another layer and call it script, code, or action script, whatever you want to call it. Select the item. See here. We want to be able to see code snippets. So go to Window and hit Code Snippets. Sometimes when you select an item and go into the action script, there's a Code Snippets button here also. And we're going to go into Actions and select Drag and Drop. Must be converted into a movie clip. It will do it automatically and give it a name. So this is movie clip 1. That's the Carmen hat. Just go down here, call it Mario hat. Select the Mario hat and do the same thing. Drag and drop. Okay. So now both of these items are draggable. So let's render that real quick, or compile it, and see how that works. Control Enter. Okay. Now, this works, the drag and drop. We didn't put anything to stop the movie, so the backgrounds are flashing back and forth. It's going from 1 to 2, going back 1 to 2, 1 to 2. So we need to tell that to stop. And what we could do for that is select the frame that the background is on for frame 1. Type stop, parenthesis, parenthesis. And we're going to do the same thing for the second background. Stop, parenthesis, parenthesis. Okay, let's try that again. Control Enter. Okay, so now it has stopped on background 1. And we can interact by moving the objects over. Okay, so now we want to be able to change the background back and forth by selecting it, or clicking it. So, select the background, hit F9 to get ActionScript back up, go to Code Snippets, and we're going to go to Timeline Navigation. Click to go to next frame and stop. And in the comments, change background 1. Okay, run it, Control Enter. Now that we clicked it, it changed the background. Now, if I use the same code on the second background, the next frame, there is no next frame. It's only going to frame 2, so it would stay exactly the same. So we're going to do the same exact code for background 2, but we do have to change it a little bit. So go to the frame with background 2, select the background, click to go to frame and stop again, auto name. Okay, and since there's no next frame, it defaults to go to and stop at 5. We're going to change that to 1. So now when you click it, it's going to revert back to the first background. And you can keep doing this if you want to add multiple backgrounds and not just 2. Like if you were doing 3 or 4 different backgrounds, you would extend this to the third frame, F6 the background frame, change it, and tell that one to go to frame 1. And then you would tell the second one to go to next. But since we're only working with 2, we're just going to leave it. Okay, run it. Now the background changes. So that's how you do a real quick click and drag dress up game. Obviously you can make clothes based on the character. And just to show you how you can make items in Flash, let's give her some glasses. I don't think they're going to turn out very well, because I'm not very good at drawing in Flash, but just for the sake of argument. And let's lock down everything we've done. Okay. Now, obviously, since I'm going to create a new object, I'm going to start a new layer. Okay. Now, let's do it in black. Okay, and we'll have a little bit of a not the greatest pair of glasses in the world, but it serves its purpose. Okay, so now we select that layer. It has selected the drawing that we created. You can right-click it, convert to symbol. Just going to call it glasses. Okay, so now this is its own object. We can actually right-click and cut it, go back into our items, unlock, paste in place. Okay, get rid of that layer. And now, just like you did with the hats, or whatever drawing you're going to pull in, code snippets, drag and drop. See how it works? Now we have a pair of glasses we just created. Okay, now to get into the publishing part. How to get this on the web so other people can view it, and how to export it as an APK file so it will work on Android devices. So first let's save it. Okay, go in the properties and change target to Air 3.2 for Android. And we're going to go to the settings. Okay, we do want it to be full screen, portrait or landscape. It all depends on the size of it. You may have to do some resizing. I always do full screen so it'll stretch it a little bit. Problem with that is it may lose a little bit of quality doing that. For render mode, I always do auto because you have no idea what the chipset of the phone it's being run on. You don't know if it has a better GPU or a CPU, so just do auto and let the phone decide how to best handle it. Okay, it's already set to output as an APK. You have your app name. That's what people are going to see when it's on the menu, so drag and drop. And the ID, the Air ID is just if you're going to put it to GooglePlay. But what we're going to do is we're just going to export it as an APK so you can email it to yourself, click it on your phone, install, or hook your device directly to your computer and drag it over and install it. Under deployment, certificate, we have to create a certificate to sign it so you have proof that it is yours. So we're going to create publisher, John Doe Software, just for the sake of it. You can just put the same thing for all those. Password, this is so just an authentication. Make sure it's something you remember because you are going to have to remember it, and where you're going to save it to. Okay. Okay, so a certificate has been created. Put in the password for the certificate. Device release. Air runtime, embedded Air runtime with this application. What this is going to do is this is going to embed the Flash code into the application. Now, unfortunately, the application ends up being about 8 MB to 9 MB, but this is so they don't have to have Flash on their phone or on their device to run the application. If you have a Flash-compatible phone, you can just do it as get Air runtime from, and it'll just run it and it'll be a really small file, but I always embed. Icons. You can go into Photoshop or whatever editing program you have if you want to use something free. There's always Gimp, and set the width and height to 36 by 36, 48 by 48, 72 by 72. These are going to be the little icons that you see on the device itself. You can use PNG, so you can have a nice transparent icon. Right now we're just going to use the default Android icon. Keep in mind that when you create these icons, when you search them, make sure that those files are in the same folder as your FLA Flash file. If you have it in a completely different folder or a completely different directory, it is not going to pull it properly. Under permissions, really all you want to do is have internet. This is a way you can keep track of how many downloads or how many people are using the actual app, specifically if you're using a service like Amazon or GooglePlay. Languages, it's a click and drag. I just check them all. That way everyone around the world will just download it and be able to use it. We're going to hit OK. Select where it's going to output. I'm just going to output it directly to the desktop. And we're going to publish. So it just exported the SWF and now it's exporting the APK file. So it's actually doing both at the same time. Okay, it is done. Let's go find it. Right here. So this is your Android version, and this is your SWF web version. Okay, so the APK file, if you want to pay the $25 to put it on Google Play, you can. The $25 is a one-time fee. You don't ever have to pay it again, and you can put as many apps as you want as long as they're age appropriate, or if you say it's adult content, just make sure it's correct. As far as the SWF, if you have a website, you can upload it to an FTP and put it on a web page. If you don't have any hosting or anything like that, you can use SWFCabin.com, and this is just kind of a portal for SWF files, so any SWF files you have, you can throw it up on there. It'll give you a link, and then you can share the link with whoever. So we're going to say drag and drop tutorial, and we're going to browse it. Sorry, I have a lot of files. Drag and drop 3. Publish. And here's the link. And there it is. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, comments, leave it on the channel, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can.